You are walking through a crowded train station. Hundreds of people move around you, shoulder to shoulder, and yet you feel strangely alone. No one meets your eyes. No one seems to notice you at all. You could trip, drop your bag, even collapse, and for a strange, uncomfortable moment, you genuinely wonder whether anyone would stop. That feeling is not paranoia. It is not social anxiety playing tricks on you. It is one of the most well-documented and unsettling phenomena in all of psychology, and it happens to you far more often than you realize. Think about the last time you were in a large crowd, a concert, a busy street, a packed subway car. Did you feel more visible or less? Did you feel more responsible for the people around you or less? Most people report the opposite of what you might expect. The more people surrounding you, the more invisible you feel and the less accountable you feel for anything happening around you. Why would adding more people to space make each individual person feel less seen, not more? In 1964, a young woman named Kitty Genovese was murdered outside her apartment building in New York City. The story that spread afterward, and the story that shaped decades of psychology research, was that dozens of neighbors heard her cries for help and did nothing. That specific account has since been challenged and partially debunked by later journalists, and the true number of witnesses who understood what was happening was almost certainly smaller than first reported. But the case captured the attention of two psychologists, and what they went on to discover was real, replicated, and deeply disturbing regardless of the exact details of that single night. Those two psychologists were named Bibb Latané and John Darley. They wanted to understand a strange pattern that seemed to defy simple explanation. Why would ordinary, decent people fail to help someone in front of dozens of witnesses? Their instinct was that the presence of other people itself might be the problem, not a lack of individual compassion. So they designed an experiment. Latané and Darley placed participants in separate rooms, told them they were taking part in a group discussion over an intercom system, and then staged an emergency. An actor, playing another participant, pretended to have a seizure over the intercom, gasping and calling for help. The real question was simple: would the participant leave the room to get help? Here is where it gets strange. When participants believed they were the only other person listening, nearly all of them helped immediately, often within seconds. But when participants believed several other people were also listening in on the same emergency, the response rate dropped sharply. Some participants took much longer to respond. Some never left the room to help at all. The more people participants believed were present, the less likely any single person was to act. Latané and Darley gave this effect a name. They called it diffusion of responsibility. The idea is not that people in crowds are cruel or indifferent. The idea is that responsibility, when spread across many people, starts to feel like it belongs to no one in particular. Each person assumes someone else is better positioned to help, more qualified to help, or already in the process of helping. When everyone assumes someone else will act, often no one does. This alone explains a great deal about how you experience crowds, but it is only one half of a much stranger picture. There is a second force at work, one that goes beyond simple responsibility and reaches into how you experience your own identity when surrounded by strangers. A psychologist named Philip Zimbardo, the same researcher behind the infamous Stanford prison experiment, proposed a concept called deindividuation. Zimbardo's idea was this: when a person becomes anonymous inside a large group, when their individual identity dissolves into the identity of the crowd, something shifts in how they think, feel, and behave. Normal self-awareness fades. The internal voice that usually monitors your own behavior, the one that keeps you polite, cautious, and accountable, quiets down considerably. Zimbardo tested this directly in a striking experiment. He had female participants deliver what they believed were electric shocks to another person, supposedly as part of a learning study. Some participants wore their own clothes and name tags, clearly identifiable. Others wore large hoods and coats that obscured their identity entirely, indistinguishable from one another. The hooded, anonymous participants delivered shocks that were on average twice as long as the identifiable ones. Nothing else changed between the two groups, not their instructions, not their supposed victim. Only their anonymity changed, and that alone was enough to significantly shift behavior. When you cannot be singled out, when you dissolve into a mass of interchangeable strangers, part of the psychological weight of your own actions seems to dissolve along with your visible identity. Now put these two forces together. Diffusion of responsibility tells you that someone else will surely act. Deindividuation tells you that you yourself are in this moment no one in particular. Combine them and you get exactly the sensation you feel walking through a crowded train station. You are anonymous, you are unaccountable, and so quietly your brain treats the entire situation as somebody else's problem to notice, somebody else's problem to solve. But here is where the story gets more interesting and more hopeful than it first appears. More recent research, particularly from a psychologist named Mark Levine, has pushed back against the idea that crowds are simply engines of passivity and moral disengagement. Levine, working with real closed-circuit security footage of actual public conflicts and emergencies, found something the older lab experiments had missed. Bystanders in real crowds intervene far more often than classic diffusion of responsibility would predict, and the deciding factor often is not simply how many people are present. It is whether those people share a sense of common identity. Levine's research suggests that when bystanders perceive themselves as part of the same group as the person in trouble, sports fans of the same team, students at the same university, residents of the same neighborhood, intervention rates rise dramatically. The anonymity of a crowd does not automatically produce indifference. It produces indifference specifically when the crowd feels like a collection of unconnected strangers with nothing binding them together. Change that sense of shared identity, and the same crowd that ignored a stranger will rally quickly around someone they perceive, even loosely, as one of their own. This reframes the entire phenomenon in an important way. The train station crowd does not feel cold because crowds are inherently cold. It feels cold because a train station is one of the most anonymous, identityless spaces a person can occupy. Strangers moving in every direction, no shared context, no shared team, no shared story connecting any two people in that hallway. Strip away identity, and you strip away the instinct to act. There is another layer to this story worth exploring, one that connects deindividuation to something you have almost certainly experienced online, not just in physical crowds. Think about the anonymity of a comment section, a forum, or a social media pylon. The same psychological mechanism Zimbardo found with hoods and coats applies just as powerfully to a blank username and a default profile picture. When your identity is stripped away, replaced by anonymity, the same quieting of self-monitoring occurs. People say things online as part of a faceless crowd of commenters that they would never say standing face to face with another person. The hood has simply changed shape from fabric to a screen name, but the psychological effect is nearly identical. This also explains something curious about how mob behavior escalates far more quickly than any individual person's morality would predict. Once anonymity sets in, and once a crowd begins acting in a certain direction, individuals do not merely fail to intervene. They sometimes actively join in, swept along by a kind of psychological momentum. Zimbardo's research, along with later work building on it, found that this is not really about ordinary people suddenly becoming cruel. It is about the ordinary restraints on cruelty, the internal voice that says this is me doing this, quietly switching off when identity dissolves into a crowd. Consider, too, why some crowds behave with remarkable warmth and cooperation while others behave with cold indifference or even hostility, despite looking almost identical from the outside, simply a large gathering of strangers in a public space. Mark Levine's security footage research offers a compelling answer here. It is rarely the size of the crowd that determines the outcome. It is the invisible social architecture running underneath it, whether the people present feel like fellow members of something, a shared team, a shared city, a shared moment, or whether they feel like disconnected individuals who happen to occupy the same physical space at the same time. A crowd of football fans from the same team will often intervene for an injured fan wearing their team's colors far faster than a crowd of anonymous commuters will intervene for an injured stranger wearing no identifying markers at all. The crowd is functionally the same size. The psychological architecture underneath it is entirely different. This has a striking implication for how emergency response training has evolved in recent decades. Modern bystander intervention programs, taught in schools, workplaces, and community organizations, now explicitly teach the single most effective countermeasure to diffusion of responsibility, which is exactly the technique described earlier, assigning direct responsibility to a specific individual rather than shouting into a diffuse crowd. This is not an abstract psychological theory anymore. It has become standard, practical training precisely because Latané and Darley's original findings, replicated across dozens of follow-up studies over the following decades, proved remarkably durable and consistent no matter the specific emergency being tested. There's a practical lesson buried inside all of this research, one worth remembering the next time you find yourself needing help in public, or the next time you're the only person positioned to help someone else. If you are ever in an emergency surrounded by a crowd of strangers, do not shout for help in general. Diffusion of responsibility guarantees that a generalized cry gets absorbed by the crowd and diluted across dozens of people who each assume someone else will respond. Instead, single someone out directly. Point at one specific person, describe something about their appearance, and assign them a specific task. That single act cuts through both diffusion of responsibility and deindividuation at once. It hands one person, by name or by description, a specific identity and a specific responsibility, and suddenly they are no longer an anonymous face in a crowd. They are the person who is asked directly to help. And if you ever find yourself on the other side of that equation, standing in a crowd, half noticing something might be wrong, remember what Latané, Darley, Zimbardo, and Levine's research all points toward together. The hesitation you feel in that moment is not a personal failing. It is a predictable, well-documented psychological pattern built into how humans process anonymity and shared responsibility. Knowing that pattern exists is often enough to interrupt it, to become the one person in the crowd who steps forward instead of assuming someone else will. So the next time you walk through a crowded train station, surrounded by hundreds of people who seem to look straight through you, understand exactly what is happening. You have not become invisible by accident. You have stepped into one of the most carefully studied blind spots in human psychology, a space where anonymity quiets your sense of self and diffuses your sense of duty, all without you ever noticing it happen. And now that you have noticed it, that crowd will never feel quite the same way again.